Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. This is Boris Tizenghausen with you. Today is June 28th. Here are the main news stories at this moment. First of all, dear Ukrainians, I congratulate you on Constitution Day. Ukraine is a young state, but during this time, Ukrainians have already proven to the whole world that freedom, dignity, and independence are not just words for us. We fight, we do not give up, and we will definitely win. Happy Constitution Day to you. And for Ukraine's Constitution Day, a gift was also prepared for the Russians. 2 oil refineries are burning in Russia after a night attack by our drones. And these are 2 of the most important refineries, among the largest in Russia. First of all, the Slavyansk oil refinery in the Krasnodar region is burning so intensely that it can be seen from space. It's about 300 kilometers from the front line, with a capacity of 4.5 million tons of oil per year. This is one of the largest refineries in southern Russia. It produced gasoline, used to produce gasoline, diesel fuel, and other petroleum products. It plays an important role in supplying the Krasnodar region and the southern regions, and not only them. But let's watch a video, a beautiful video, of how this refinery is burning. Magnificent. Why is this refinery important? Well, first of all, it was from this refinery that supplies were sent to the occupied Crimea. It's located right on the road to the Kerch Bridge. So after Temryuk, then Taman, and then they used to ferry supplies to Crimea. And now, by the way, they use fuel trucks across the Kerch Bridge. Basically, as Putin used to say, the Russian Federation has the best air defense in the world. But today, this best air defense in the world has basically missed a refinery that I'm sure will burn to the ground. That very refinery that was shipping fuel to the occupied Crimea. That's it. It's over. And drones also struck the Yaroslavl oil refinery Yanos. That's in the Yaroslavl region, and the distance here is greater, 700 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. Its capacity is 15 million tons of oil per year. So it's a really huge refinery. It's among the top 5. In fact, I think it ranks 5th in Russia in terms of oil processing volume. Why is this refinery also very important to us? Well, first of all, it's one of the largest, obviously, but it also supplies fuel to the Central Federal District, including Moscow and neighboring regions. That is, it produced huge volumes of gasoline, diesel fuel, and aviation kerosene. After the shutdown of the Moscow refinery, it seems that there is a systematic cutting off of Moscow from supplies from other regions. Meanwhile, Crimea has also been hit. There is less and less electricity in occupied Crimea. Last night, the Saki thermal power plant left the chat. Within an hour, there were 16 explosions there, followed by a large fire. In short, our drones are at work. The air defense system in Crimea can't do anything. Every day, air defense elements in occupied Crimea are being taken out. Soon there will be very, very few of them left there. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important for the channel's growth, and you can do it right now without delay. Subscribe. Here, we are fighting against Putin's propaganda, and together we can do it much more effectively. So go ahead and subscribe. Now for the news from the Everything is Going According to Putin's Plan series. The new air defense ring is being built in Moscow, and this time it's not made up of pantsirs on towers to counter drones. Those pantsirs are already being hauled onto the roofs of residential buildings. Instead, this ring is being constructed from S-400 surface-to-air missile systems, which are theoretically capable of intercepting ballistic missiles. In other words, Moscow is preparing to face Ukrainian ballistic missiles. Moscow has already encountered Ukrainian drones, and as I understand it, they didn't like it very much, especially at the Moscow oil refinery. And now they're getting ready for ballistic missiles. And here, you'd have to be completely clueless not to realize that with each passing day, the situation for Russians is getting worse and worse. In March 2022, if you had told any Muscovite that Ukrainian drones would reach Moscow, that air raid sirens would sound in Moscow, that additional concrete pads for S-400 launchers would be built on Vorobyovy Gori, and that all of Russia would be experiencing a fuel shortage and standing in lines at that time, no one would have ever believed you back then, in the now distant year of 2022. They would have, by the way, do you remember they used to laugh back then? Don't make us laugh, our Iskanders. And you could have added, don't make us laugh with your Iskanders because in 2026 Ukrainian Flamingo missiles will blow up the Iskander factory. Well, no one would have believed you back then, for sure. But now Russians have no choice but to believe it. And here are the photos that just came in after yesterday's strike on that Iskander factory. Our missiles hit the Titan-Barrikades factory very, very hard. Look, they practically demolished the building down to its foundation. And of course, last night the Russians tried to strike Kiev with ballistic missiles. Obviously, Putin has to show some kind of retaliatory strikes, at least for his own masses. They tried to hit Kiev with ballistic missiles. I still don't understand what that was. It wasn't some kind of massive attack. It was like this. 6 ballistic missiles were launched and 2 Zircons. Our air defense forces shot down 6 out of 6 ballistic missiles and 1 out of 2 Zircons. So that's a very high success rate. Well, as we can see, Ukraine is showing the whole world that it is necessary and possible to fight an enemy who outnumbers you in both manpower and equipment. And if you get help, you can do it even more effectively. So a huge thank you to everyone who is helping Ukraine. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today, we are continuing to raise funds for electronic warfare equipment for the 33rd Assault Regiment, which is defending the Zaporizhzhia direction, for our assault troops who are the first to meet the enemy, literally face to face. The fighters need electronic warfare equipment to protect themselves from Russian drones, vehicle-mounted EW, trench EW, and individual EW devices. The soldiers have recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
Ми бійці 33-го окремого штурмового полку, що воює зараз на Запорізькому напрямку. Сьогодні на фронті технології змінюються дуже швидко. Противник активно використовує FPV та розвідувальні дрони, НРК. Тому нам постійно доводиться адаптуватися та посилювати захист. Одним з найефективніших рішень є засоби радіоелектронної боротьби, які дозволяють подавляти сигнали керування дронами та захищати бійців та техніку. Звертаємося по допомогу до спільноти Бориса Тізенгаузена. Штурмовикам потрібні окопний реп, автомобільний реп та індивідуальний реп для захисту бійців та техніки. Кожен такий засіб – це шанс зберегти життя воїнів та техніку. Дякуємо всім і кожному. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
Let's help our assault troops from the 33rd Regiment. The link to donate is in the description of this video. There are options for Mono, Privat and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. We've already raised more than half of the needed amount. If we come together now, we can quickly close this fundraiser. And in every episode, I thank you separately for helping our soldiers. Thank you so much. Together, we are an incredible force. Remember that. Your donation directly saves the lives of our defenders. Putin and Lukashenko have been holding talks for the second day at Putin's residence in Valdai. In my opinion, these are the most closed-door talks ever held between these two ghouls, Lupi and Pupi. The negotiations are taking place in complete secrecy. They haven't even posted a joint photo. The Kremlin hasn't published the agenda, doesn't plan any joint statements, and isn't planning to sign any documents. And on Lukashenko's channel, there's complete silence. So, absolutely nothing about this meeting. There are only a few shots of him arriving in Russia, literally just a few seconds. He's in some kind of sweatpants with stretched out knees, barely crawling down the plane stairs, just a couple of seconds. And on Lukashenko's channel, it says that he already had talks with Putin for 2 days and then took off somewhere to Southeast Asia. It's all just some kind of mystery. There's absolutely nothing about the substance of those 2 days of cackling with the bald scoundrel. But, it's just one riddle after another. Lukashenko arrived to see Putin on one plane, but a different plane, which arrived from Belarus today, headed off towards Southeast Asia. So maybe the second plane delivered little Kolya with the Spitz dog to a resort. They decided to take the whole family to Southeast Asia. But there's another theory. Lukashenko didn't dare to fly any further on the plane he arrived in to the Russian Federation. The plane that had been sitting in a Russian airport for 2 days. Who knows what someone might have tampered with there, and then, it could end up like with Prigozhin. That's why a new plane arrived, and Lukashenko, so to speak, loaded his tuberous body onto it and took off. So what is actually known at this point? According to the Kremlin's official version, that is, the official version, they discussed issues of the Union state and trade economic cooperation. Yes, of course. In other words, the negotiations are taking place immediately after a sharp escalation of the situation around Belarus and an ultimatum from Ukraine. Let me remind you, earlier Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Russia used Belarusian territory to launch its Shaheds. Relay stations were deployed on the territory of Belarus. Lukashenko was given a 1-week ultimatum. And just a couple of days ago, Zelensky announced that the relay stations had stopped working. Shortly before the trip, and this is very important, Lukashenko claimed that he had met with representatives of Ukraine. He told someone from the Russian delegation that had arrived to see him, "Representatives of Ukraine were just sitting here recently. I told them that I don't want to drag Belarus into the war." So Lukashenko met with representatives of Ukraine who had come to see him. Apparently they gave him a new ultimatum or new information, and he flew to Putin. So essentially, in this case, he is acting as an intermediary, as a courier. Part of the information that the Ukrainian side gave him, I think, was also intended for Lukashenko himself. I think it was made very clear to him what would happen if the relay stations for Russian drones on the territory of Belarus are switched on again, or if there is any other attempt to help Putin in this war using the territory of the Republic of Belarus. So he flew off to relay to the underground heel-wearer that everyone is fed up with his nonsense about, what was it, the modality of anchorage. This nonsense has worn everyone out. By the way, it's no coincidence that Lavrov started talking about how the Americans have betrayed them again. Apparently, the White House has also lost interest in the Botox jellyfish. What modalities of anchorage are you even talking about? Just stop it already. Not only did Lukashenko recently apologize to Zelensky, but Putin is now in a situation where he needs to raise the stakes. You see what's happening? Putin can't turn the tide of this war. There's a stalemate at the front, while Ukraine is striking, taking out oil refineries, and there are lines for gasoline in Russia. Overall, the situation is very difficult, and Putin needs to raise the stakes. This is exactly where Lukashenko could help him. This is precisely the moment when provocations could be launched from Belarusian territory, not only against Ukraine. In fact, it would probably be even better for Putin if these provocations were directed at NATO countries, so that they would stop helping Ukraine. So Lukashenko is basically doing the splits in an almost impossible way. Just a little more, like Van Damme in one of his movies. And if he goes any further, Lukashenko is definitely going to split something. These days, Lukashenko starts almost every speech by saying Belarus must not be dragged into the war. And do you remember just recently the Russians tried to stage a provocation with a drone strike on a bus carrying Belarusian children? So at this point, they resorted to some pretty extreme FSB-style tactics, but the situation somehow fizzled out. Did you notice that Lukashenko didn't believe it could have been a Ukrainian drone or that Ukrainians were behind it? I think that in his rather vague statements, he made it perfectly clear to the Russian side that he knows who was behind it. And in Russia, the worse the situation gets, the more hysterical the propagandists become. Solovyov called for taking money from the banks and giving it to support Crimea. Let me quote this scumbag. Which sector has made the most money? The banking sector? Well, that means we should take the money from the banks and send it to Crimea. That's a robber's measure. Call it whatever you want, but it needs to be done. And what does it mean to take money from the banks? Does he mean the bank's own money or what? Whose money is actually in the banks? So Solovyov expressed the same idea as the main communist of the Russian Federation, Zhuganov, just in a more roundabout way. So basically, let's take the bank's money, well, the money of Russians, and send it to Crimea. So be prepared, Russians, that in the near future your deposits will somehow, well, be quietly frozen. All deposits need to be taken. By the way, Russians have already caught on to this, and those who are a bit smarter have started withdrawing their deposits. There is a record outflow of deposits. Some will make it in time, and some perhaps will not. In addition to the record outflow of deposits from banks, Russians are also continuing to buy up foreign currency at record levels. Do they not trust the ruble or what? I don't understand how this is possible. Medvedev, it seems, suddenly woke up, came out of hibernation, and warned the citizens of Armenia about the severe consequences of choosing a European course. Maybe someone should warn Medvedev about the severe consequences of consuming so much hawthorn tincture. By the way, look, let me quote an interesting point. It's a pity that the political ambitions of the current authorities turned out to be more important than Armenia's national interests. Medvedev believes that breaking ties with Russia will have severe consequences for the citizens of Armenia, And when will Medvedev start dealing with his own country and his own citizens? Who even asked you, Medvedev? Just keep sipping from your bag and stop acting smart. You know, it feels like in Russia everyone knows how Armenians, Ukrainians, citizens of the European Union, Azerbaijanis and Poles should live. Everyone seems to know, but for some reason no one knows how to ensure a decent standard of living for Russians themselves. What kind of mystery is that? By the way, I came across another telling post today. There, in the lines for gasoline all across Russia, real battles are breaking out. People can't take it anymore. The nerves, the heat, the fights, the brawls. And there, in the line for gasoline, somewhere in the Krasnodar region, they almost beat up a SVO soldier because he tried to cut in line. How can that be? So what, is he no longer a hero to Russians? But according to Putin, everywhere and all the time our guys are advancing. As he recently said, they keep pounding and pounding and pounding. I don't know what they're pounding over there in the Kremlin, but judging by Putin's latest statements, he's not living in this reality at all. They're pounding something pretty strong over there. The authorities of the Murmansk region have warned residents of border areas about possible activity by saboteurs. Can you imagine? However, the publication was soon deleted. So, the regional operations headquarters urged residents of the Kola, Kovdor, Kandalaksha and Pechenga districts to be extra vigilant. The message recommended reporting to the police and the FSB about suspicious individuals spotted outside populated areas, as well as about unattended bags, boxes, and other items. Yes, the witch hunt has begun, you know, just like in Soviet times. A man in a hat and coat is a spy, in sunglasses, a spy with a camera, 200% a spy. Can you imagine, now the old communist ladies there in Murmansk will start identifying spies. And who exactly are they planning to catch there? Who are saboteurs from Finland or Norway planning to come to them? I think this is some kind of false start. They probably wanted to show some fake Finnish or Norwegian saboteurs. You know, in Russia this always happens in a very grotesque way, but it's too early? Too early? Well, judging by the fact that the leader of the Russian Federation has completely lost his mind, I think the same thing is happening with the regional leaders. That's why the balding jellyfish is twitching hard on its strings. The worse the situation gets in Russia, the more of this absolute nonsense there will be. The chaos will only keep growing. Well, we don't mind. And you, friends, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel, don't forget. Let's help our assault troops from the 33rd Assault Regiment. The link to donate is in the description of this video. Our help is needed by them right now. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.